Hey there, today we are going to be looking at how we can take a quadratic equation and factor it into two binomials. So we're going to be starting with a quadratic equation that's in standard form, and then we're going to be splitting it up into two binomials multiplied together. So the quadratic equation that we're going to look at today is we're going to have 3x squared plus 4x minus 4. Now, depending on what you're given in your particular problem, this may be all you're given, and you may be told to factor. You may also have equals 0, or you could potentially have f of x out on the left side as well. It doesn't matter your starting form, but if you are working with an equation, you want to make sure that your one of the two sides is equal to 0, so you don't have any other terms over here on this side other than just the 0. If you do, you will need to move everything over to the same side and get equals 0 before you start attempting to factor this. So what we're going to do when we factor is we're going to start by multiplying the number in front of x squared with our last number here. Essentially, we're multiplying our a times by our c. So in this case, 3 times by negative 4 is going to give us negative 12. And what we're going to do is we're going to find all of our factors of negative 12. We're going to find all of the pairs of numbers that multiply to negative 12, because we want to find a pair of numbers that multiplies to negative 12, but then adds to positive 4 here in the middle. So if I start with the most basic ones, I've got positive 1 and negative 12, but I also have negative 1 and positive 12. I can have positive 2 and negative 6. Then I also have negative 2 and positive 6. Now at this point, some of you may be seeing that you've already identified which pair we're using. If I quickly write out my last pair, I would also have 3 and negative 4, and then negative 3 and positive 4. But we see here that we want to add up to a positive 4 in the middle. Well, if I look at positive 2 and negative 6, these are going to add to negative 4, whereas the negative 2 and positive 6 will add to a positive 4. So you want to make sure not only that you're adding to the correct number, but you are also adding to the correct sign. So since this 4 here is positive, we want to use the negative 2 and the positive 6 pair that we see right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to split this 4x up into negative 2x plus 6x. Because we know that negative 2 plus 6 is equal to 4. Therefore, negative 2x plus 6x is also equal to 4. We're just going the opposite direction. We're splitting it up. Now, the 3x squared and the negative 4 on the end, those are going to stay the same. So I'm just going to bring these down. And technically, we still have this equals 0 here on the right side, but we're not necessarily going to do anything with that. I'm just going to keep writing that as we go. Now, I want to rewrite this whole thing, and I want to group up my terms into parentheses. So the first two terms here are going to be grouped up in their own parentheses, and the second two terms are also going to be grouped up in parentheses here. None of my numbers are going to change, but I'm just going to rewrite them with parentheses. Now, 3x squared minus 2x will go in the first parentheses. The 6x minus 4 will go in the second parentheses. Once again, we still have the equals 0 here. And we need to make sure that we have a plus sign in between the two parentheses. Now, that's not a big deal on this particular problem, but if this 6 were negative for some reason, we would need to bring that negative inside the parentheses with the 6. So whatever sign is on this term right here needs to come inside the second parentheses here. Like I said, not a big deal on this problem, but it will make a difference on other problems. Now, looking at each of these parentheses, we need to factor out our greatest common factor. So if I look at my first parentheses, I see 3 and 2 can only be divided by 1, but they do both have x's. So I want to divide both of these by 1x. My second parentheses, if I've got 6x and -4, I can divide both of these by 2, but I don't want to include an x because there's no x with the second term here. There's no x with the 4. So I'm just going to divide by 2. The terms that I'm dividing by will go in front of my parentheses at the next stage. Those are going to be my greatest common factors. So I'll have 1x, or just x, in front of the first parentheses. And then I will have 2 in front of the second parentheses. And this is going to be a +2 because this is positive right here, and we're dividing by a positive number. Inside the parentheses, I want to put the result of my division. So 3 divided by 1 is still 3, but x squared divided by x is now x. So I've got 3x right there. -2 divided by 1 is still -2. And x divided by x cancels out. So now I just have 3x minus 2 in the first parentheses here. In the second parentheses, I want to divide by 2. So 6x divided by 2 will give me 3x. And then 4 divided by 2 will be 2. So I've got 3x minus 2. Once again, we still keep this equals 0 on the right side. Hopefully you should notice that we have the same thing inside both parentheses. That means we've done our work correctly. If we had different things in either parentheses, different numbers, or even different signs, that means that we either made a mistake with the division, or it means we made a mistake splitting up our term for our very first step right here. But since we have the exact same thing inside both parentheses, we know that we've done our work correctly. Now that we do see that we have the same thing, we can factor out this whole parentheses from the whole equation. So when we have this part that's the same, we can divide the whole equation by that same thing. And just like our previous step where our greatest common factor went in front, our greatest common factor from these parentheses is going to go out in front. So 3x minus 2 will become the first parentheses for our answer. And the portion that was left over is the portion that was in front of the 2 parentheses at the previous stage. So the second parentheses for our answer is going to be x plus 2. So here, this is completely factored. This is factored into 2 binomials. You might be asked to do something else. You might be asked to solve for x, in which case you would give each parentheses its own equation and you would solve those out individually. But this is entirely factored and entirely complete for this.